Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Free RBT Exam Prep. My name is Noelle Escovedo, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. You guys know the drill. Knowledge is power. My whole goal here is for you guys to pass that RBT exam. So, you know how this works, right? We're going to go through each category of that task list. There are 6 different categories that you need to know and subcategories, and we're going to go through each one. So whether you're listening on the podcast, you want to follow A, A1, A2, A3, A4, and then B, and then C, and then D, and then E, and then F, and it concludes there. Or if you're taking a look on YouTube, you can watch the videos of these study sessions as well. So guys, you know what? The background is a little bit different today because I am in the corner of a hotel room at the Cal-ABA Conference 2019 in Long Beach. I really want you guys to join these conferences, okay? Be hungry for it. Chase that credential, chase the field, chase the knowledge, and get to these conferences. There's fabulous presenters and amazing research out there that I want you guys to be a part of, okay? So jumping into it, today we are talking about the history of ABA or some foundations before we get into the task list items. So let's start this study session with what the heck is ABA? Right? ABA is applied behavior analysis, and it is the science of applying behavioral principles to change socially significant behaviors to a meaningful degree. I really want you to memorize that definition because that's pretty much how they word it every time. Now, what are socially significant behaviors? That can be anything, guys. That can be academics, it can be leisure, it can be social, it can be vocational skills, okay? Now, what I want you to remember is what is useful for one client is not necessarily useful for another client. So think about what is going to change that individual's quality of life. Okay, that's something to consider. Now, I want to talk about dosages and treatment. So just like a doctor uses a prescription of medicine that must be followed with care to see optimal progress, it's the same thing with how we prescribe a dosage of treatment hours. I want you to think about it, that it's analogous to a doctor prescribing medication, right? You can't just take, if a doctor says, I want you to take these 3 pills 3 times a day, I want you to take 1 pill. Okay? You can't just go on and say, well, I think I'll take 1 pill, or I think I'll just take a little bit of this pill, or maybe I'll try it Monday and Wednesday and not the rest of the week, right? Because the doctor is the expert, and they're giving you a specific dosage that they know you will see optimal gains. The same thing is true for a behavior analyst or an RBT, right? If we prescribe a certain number of hours, it's a treatment, it's a prescription, it's a dosage that must be followed with care in order to see maximal gains, okay? So a doctor measures blood pressure to determine if that blood pressure medicine was effective in reducing that blood pressure, right? Analogous to that, a behavior analyst measures behavior, right? By analyzing the data to determine if the behavioral interventions were effective for increasing or decreasing that target behavior. I want you to remember that, okay? Now, I want to talk about graphic display. In the field of ABA, we are huge. We are big on graphic display. We want to be able to open that binder, take a look at that graph, and immediately there should be implications and we should be able to see the trend of that behavior. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it variable? What's going on here, right? We should be able to take a look at it and see, yes, our interventions are working, or man, if it's variable, something's not working here. What's going on? Or perhaps it's steady for a while and settling a behavior spike. We should immediately be able to take a look and see, well, what happened right there? What happened in February? Was it a med change? Are they in extreme amounts of pain? What is going on here that led to that spike in behavior? So when we take a look at that graphic display, it should be labeled beautifully. We should have that x-axis labeled beautifully. We should have that y-axis labeled beautifully. We should have titles. We should have units of measurement there. If it's a line graph, we're taking a look at the unit of time on that x-axis. Are we looking at days of the week? Are we looking at months? And that y-axis, that vertical axis, is the dependent variable, okay? So we're applying our interventions, right? That independent variable to produce a change and effect on that dependent variable. So you're thinking, what am I trying to change? Is it number of hits? Is it the percentage of intervals? Is it the duration of an outburst? That is going to be on that y-axis, or that dependent variable. Okay, so that's graphic display. I want to give you an example there. I had my staff do a quick activity analysis and scatter plot because we had a client who was engaging in severe crisis level behavior every day. And staff are feeling like it's happening all the time, all day long. And so we said, listen, do a quick scatter plot, right? Anecdotally, that's not going to help, but you need to reference the data. Okay, so they did a scatter plot, and what they did was they put on that x-axis Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, well, actually the date of when there was an occurrence of behavior. And on that y-axis, I don't know if I'm doing this the right way because it's opposite, right? The y-axis were the times of day, and then I had them put a dot for every time there was a behavior. Well, what did we find out? All of the behavior was occurring between 7 and 8 p.m. Okay, so when we're talking about how valuable graphic display is, a behavior analyst or an RBT can pick up that graph and immediately see patterns of behavior and see trends in what's going on, right? So we saw a bunch of dots at the bottom there between 7 and 8 p.m. and there were no dots the rest of the day. So then we think, well, what happens? What is the condition that there is no behavior in the morning? What's going on there, right? And what's going on in the 7 to 8 p.m. block that there's so much behavior? Well, come to find out that at 7 and 8 p.m., it's unstructured. That client was waiting. There's nothing to do. Everyone, kind of the dynamic in the group home is really low and kind of quiet, and there's nothing going on. And so it took just a glance to take a look at that and find out some simple things that we can do. Well, let's provide some enriched and stimulating activities in that time. And as soon as we did that, we saw that behavior completely decrease, which is phenomenal. So graphic display, guys, super key, very important, okay? Next thing I want to talk about here, folks, is 7 principles of ABA founded by Bear, Wolf, and Risley in an article written in 1968. Okay, you probably won't have to know the date, but I do want you to remember that there are 7 principles written by Bear, Wolf, and Risley. I have a colleague who says Grizzly Bear because that helps him remember Bear, Wolf, and Risley, Grizzly. I don't know. Does it work for you? Okay, so think about adult learning, guys. When you're trying to think of what's going to work for the exam, use mnemonics and visual imagery and cute little acronyms to help you memorize things like this, okay? So for the 7 principles of ABA, a common one that you might hear is BAT cage, B-A-T-C-A-G-E. The B stands for behavioral, and that means we're dealing with measurable behavior, okay? The A is applied, and that means that behaviors are of social importance. We're applying it to real life behaviors, socially significant behaviors. Technological is T, and that basically means, it's kind of a funny one, it means that interventions have to be described well enough that anyone can come in and implement the exact same thing that we're implementing. So technological means it has to be described well enough. The C is for conceptually systematic. It is what it sounds like. Concepts must be systematic. They must use the basic principles of behavior, okay? And it has to have that theoretical base. It can't be a set of tricks or a package or something like that. So we talked about B, behavioral, A was applied, T was technological, C was conceptually systematic, A is analytic. And remember, guys, this is the second A. So when we're talking about the 7 principles of ABA, there's applied and analytic. Those are the 2 A's. So analytic means it requires an objective demonstration that the procedures caused the effect. We want to see that there's experimental control, okay? And pardon the noises in the background. Again, just in a hotel in a funny spot back here. Okay, so B, behavioral, A, applied, T, technological, C, conceptually systematic, A is analytic, and G is generality. And that means it works in new environments and it works with new people. Okay, should be able to generalize. And then lastly, the E is effective, and it means that it produces strong effects. That's an easy one. So when I'm talking about the 7 principles of ABA, who are the 3 authors? Bear, Wolf, and Risley. That's right. And what's a cute little mnemonic that you can remember? BAT cage. So pause this video here and see if you could remember what those letters stand for. Nice job, everyone. Okay, so we're going to move on to the 6 attitudes of science. Okay, so this is how we approach our science. These are the attitudes we have about our field, our science. And the 6 letters are D, E, E, R, P, P. I learned from Pass the Big ABA exam, just a funny little thing is Dear PP. Sidebar, they say with learning, you learn through repetition and contrast. So if you can think of something just super wacky, sometimes that'll help you remember. And Dear PP is wacky enough. You can think of some goofy imagery of Dear PP. Okay, so the D in Dear PP stands for determinism. We have a deterministic approach and attitude in science. And what that means is we believe that things happen in an orderly fashion. Behavior does not happen out of the blue for no reason, okay? So if someone says, oh my gosh, it came out of nowhere, we're going to go with a deterministic idea here and believe that it did not come out of the blue and that everything kind of has it happened for a reason and it was caused by something else. It did not happen out of the blue. It happens in an orderly fashion. So that's the D. There are 2 E's in Dear PP. And that's experimental and empiricism. So experimental means the manipulation of the independent variable to produce changes in the dependent variable. Okay, guys? So the independent variable is basically our intervention to produce a change in the dependent variable, which is going to be the thing that you think, what are we measuring here? Number of hits, number of instances of self-injury, okay, percentage of intervals of some type of behavior. So that y-axis, that up and down vertical axis, that is the dependent variable, okay? And of course, once a functional relationship is observed, the researcher can kind of further analyze the relationship. We're talking about experimental there. We talked about D, determinism. E is experimental. Next one is empiricism. It is what it sounds like, empirical. Right? So we're observing through an objective manner. This is not based on emotions, not based on beliefs. Empiricism. The R in Dear PP stands for replication. So repeated experimentation. Easy one, obvious. And then the last 2 P's are parsimony and philosophical doubt. I love the word parsimony. And it means that we rule out simple answers before looking into more complex ones, okay? So, sometimes you'll have a family member that said, I think I have this hypothesis that the reason why they're doing this behavior is because one time when they were 5 years old, something great, and they have this just totally elaborate story as to what happened. And then we might say, we're going to go with parsimony here and probably just rule out some simple answers before looking into more complex ones. Does that make sense? I love that word. I love the word parsimony. It just has a nice ring to it. Okay, folks, the last P in Dear PP is philosophical doubt, and that encourages us as scientists to constantly doubt and question. We want to remain open to learning. Very good. So when you think of the 6 attitudes of science, what's a cute little mnemonic or acronym to remember that? Dear PP. And I would like you to pause this video now and see if you can remember what each of those letters stands for. The D is for determinism. E, experimental. The second E, empiricism. R is for replication. And the last 2 P's, parsimony and philosophical doubt. You got this. Okay, next thing, 3 principles of behavior. Super easy. Reinforcement, extinction, and punishment. Reinforcement basically means following a behavior, a stimulus can be added or taken away that increases the future frequency of behavior. Okay, so hear me out, guys. Reinforcement increases the future frequency of behavior. Punishment, conversely, decreases the future frequency of behavior. So when you're asking yourself, is something reinforcement or punishment? Well, did it increase the future frequency or did it decrease the future frequency? That's all you want to think about when it comes to reinforcement and punishment. Got it? Don't confuse yourself on that one. Okay, so the 3 principles of behavior: reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. So extinction is a procedure where a previously reinforced behavior is no longer reinforced. Okay, so what happens, let's give you a quick example here. So the child in the grocery store starts screaming and crying because they want the candy bar. What does mom do? Wants to get that kid quiet, so she gives them the candy bar. Bad move, Mom. Mom completely just reinforced that behavior if it increases the future likelihood. And it's going to increase because you know what? The child learns, if I want a candy bar, what the heck do I do? Kick and scream bloody murder. Works every time. So that behavior continues. Thus, it was positively reinforced by Mom providing the candy. Now, if Mom starts to consult with you, my friend, the RBT, and the RBT comes in and says, Mom, this is not going good. The way that you're giving that candy is actually maintaining this behavior. Okay, you're positively reinforcing this behavior. You're reinforcing it. It's continuing. Right? So then the RBT, you're going to say, Mom, we're going to do an extinction procedure here. So what I want you to do is I want you to stop giving the candy bar. Okay? So when that child goes into the grocery store, they might start kicking and screaming because that's how they've reliably gotten the candy bar in their learning history, but they're not going to get the candy bar anymore because Mom is implementing an extinction procedure. And so what's going to happen is we're going to see a huge extinction burst, right? So when someone implements extinction and stops rewarding a previously reinforced behavior, suddenly it spikes, and that's called the extinction burst. And then it starts to decline and become eliminated, and that is called extinction. All right, guys, we talked about the 3 principles of behavior. Pause here so you can remember what they are. Oh, by the way, another little note. We were talking about reinforcement and punishment. We said reinforcement increases behavior and punishment decreases behavior. A cute little fun thing that we can use sometimes to remember that are ribs prefer to be dipped in barbecue. That sounds a little kooky, I know, but we're talking about RIB. Reinforcement increases behavior. And then PDB, punishment decreases behavior. Or prefers to be dipped in barbecue. Does that make sense? Kind of goofy. I personally love ribs. Works for me. Okay, some important people, guys. I have 3 important people for you, and that is Skinner, Pavlov, John Watson. Skinner's the founder of ABA. You should know this from your modules. Operant conditioning started with pigeons pecking lights to get food. You remember that, right? Pavlov, he's the gentleman that did the classical conditioning approach. And if you remember, that dealt with the bell and the dogs, right? And so basically what he did is he would ring the bell and then he would provide food for his dogs. And he would repeat this, right? He would ring the bell, provide some food. Ring the bell, provide some food. Before you know it, what would happen is he would ring the bell, and before providing the food, the dogs would start to salivate. So what does that mean? It means that Pavlov successfully paired a neutral stimulus, which was the bell, with an unconditioned stimulus, an unlearned stimulus, which was the food, so that the neutral stimulus, the bell, produced the involuntary effect, which is the dog salivating. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So that's Pavlov with classical conditioning. And then John Watson, if you remember from your modules, he's the father of modern behaviorism, folks. And he was an American psychologist. He had that little Albert experiment, which is kind of interesting. And he talked a lot about animals and child rearing and things of that nature. For more information, guys, research it. Take a look at those modules. Alrighty, so we talked about classical conditioning, we talked about operant conditioning. If you see me looking this way, it's because I'm referencing my study guide. Guys, get that, connect with me. You want to follow along with this comprehensive study guide, connect with me to get mock exams, exam questions, competencies, videos, data sheets, things of that nature. I want you to pass, okay? A stimulus, let's talk about the word stimulus. It's kind of a funny word, okay? A stimulus is any event, really anything, that an organism can detect through its senses. Can be internal, like a headache. Okay, so a headache can be a stimulus. Or external, like light, or an instruction, or a person, or praise. Any one of those things can be a stimulus. Okay, so if you remember the ABCs of behavior, right? The A is the antecedent, the B is the behavior, the C is the consequence. Well, the stimulus can be in the A category, the antecedent. And when it is, we're talking about a discriminative stimulus, okay? So a discriminative stimulus is something that signals that reinforcement is available, All right. And so if I am driving and I see a donut sign, that to me signals that reinforcement is available. And what is that reinforcement? It's that donut. Let me ask you guys a question. What kind of donut do you think Noelle Escovedo is going to pull over to get? What kind do you think it is? Am I a maple bar person? Am I a raised glaze person? What's your guess? You're wrong. It's a chocolate old-fashioned. They're the best. I have a super, super sweet tooth, guys. I just want to let you in on that secret. Okay, coming back to stimulus. So an SD can be an instruction, it can be in person, and basically it signals that reinforcement is available. So when you're thinking of that child in the grocery store, I just realized the video camera's over there and I'm probably looking at the wrong thing. I have to do this on my phone today because I'm stuck in the hotel and my Mac is doing something funny, so we're going for it. So going back to that grocery store example, if mom is always providing that candy bar, then mom is an SD. She signals that reinforcement is available, okay? So that's the SD. That is when a stimulus is an antecedent stimulus and it triggers behavior. But something I want to tell you about as well, okay? If you think about the A, the B, and the C, right? So let's say I tell Johnny, go get your backpack is the antecedent, my instruction, my SD. And then the behavior is Johnny goes and gets his backpack. He's such a good boy. I love that, Johnny. And then the C, or the consequences, I say, Johnny, you are the man. Great job getting your backpack, buddy. So I become an SD for praise. Johnny knows that as soon as I give him an instruction and he listens, I'm going to provide that praise. I become an SD, or a discriminative stimulus, because I signal that reinforcement is available, okay? Now, when I provide that praise, I go, great job, Johnny. I give him that attention. That is also a stimulus, okay? So there's an antecedent stimulus. That can be the stimulus discriminative. And there's also that stimulus reinforcer when I go, nice job, Johnny, okay? If I take medication, that's my behavior to relieve a headache, I am taking away that stimulus, okay? And that is the headache. Alrighty, guys, so let's move on here. Oh, conversely, we talked about an SD, a discriminative stimulus, signaling that reinforcement is available. Conversely, an S delta signals that reinforcement is not available, all right? Go back to the grocery store example. With that child, when he enters the grocery store and he sees mom, she's an SD, that signals that reinforcement is available. But what if you walk up? You are the RBT.